These are the NBA draft picks that built dynasties and destroyed franchises in equal measure. From Michael Jordan falling to 3rd overall, to Anthony Bennett becoming the worst #1 pick in history, the NBA draft has created legends and left teams wondering what could have been for decades. The NBA draft isn't just about selecting players, it's about selecting futures. Basketball is uniquely a star-driven sport where one player can transform everything. With only 10 players on the court at any given time, a single draft pick can shift the entire balance of power in the league. That's why teams will deliberately lose entire seasons just for a shot at the #1 overall pick, and why general managers lose their jobs over a single decision made on draft night. But here's what makes the draft so fascinating and so cruel. For every legend discovered, there's a bust that haunts a franchise for years. For every Michael Jordan, there's a Sam Bowie. For every Tim Duncan, there's a Greg Oden. The same process that creates dynasties can destroy them just as quickly. Let's start with the disasters, because understanding the failures makes the successes even more remarkable. Anthony Bennett's name still makes Cleveland Cavaliers fans wince. Selected #1 overall in 2013, Bennett wasn't just a bad pick, he was historically catastrophic. In 4 NBA seasons, he averaged 4.4 points and 3.1 rebounds per game. The player deemed the best prospect in the entire world couldn't even crack double digits in scoring. He made 4 starts in his entire career before Brooklyn waived him midway through the 2016-17 season. But Bennett wasn't alone in Cleveland's draft misery. The same franchise that would later celebrate LeBron James had suffered through other disasters as well. Yet Bennett stands out because 2013 wasn't considered a weak draft class. Giannis Antetokounmpo went 15th that same year. The Bucks discovered a 2-time MVP and NBA champion at 15, while Cleveland struck out completely at #1. Portland Trail Blazers fans might argue they've suffered more than anyone. In 1972, they selected LaRue Martin 1st overall, passing on Bob McAdoo and Julius Erving, 2 future Hall of Famers. Martin averaged 5.3 points and 4.3 rebounds in 4 forgettable seasons. But Portland wasn't finished torturing their fan base. 12 years later, in 1984, they faced one of the most consequential draft decisions in NBA history. With the 2nd pick, they chose Sam Bowie over Michael Jordan. Now, Bowie wasn't terrible when healthy. He made the all-rookie team and showed flashes of being a productive center. But injuries destroyed his career, limiting him to 139 games in 5 Portland seasons. Meanwhile, Jordan became, well, Jordan. The cruel irony. Portland already had Clyde Drexler at shooting guard, so they felt they needed a center more than another wing player. It was logical thinking that created one of sports history's greatest what-ifs. Portland's draft curse struck again in 2007, when they selected Greg Oden 1st overall over Kevin Durant. Oden was called a once-in-a-decade type player by Steve Kerr. At 7 feet with incredible athleticism, he looked unstoppable. Instead, he played 105 career games over 5 years, averaging 8.0 points and 6.2 rebounds while enduring 7 knee surgeries. Durant, meanwhile, became one of the greatest scorers in basketball history. Then there's Darko Milicic, arguably the most painful bust because of what surrounded him. In 2003, Detroit selected the Serbian center 2nd overall in what became one of the greatest draft classes ever. The next 3 picks? Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh, and Dwyane Wade. 3 future Hall of Famers who combined for multiple championships and all-star appearances. Milicic averaged 6.0 points and 4.2 rebounds for his career. Joe Dumars, Detroit's GM, later admitted, "Absolutely, it was a mistake." The 2003 draft produced 9 All-Stars, but Detroit managed to avoid all of them, except for the one they ironically won a championship with in 2004. Milicic, in a twisted bit of irony, was actually the first player from the top 5 picks to win an NBA title, though he barely played in Detroit's championship run. But these failures only make the legendary picks more incredible. Because when teams get it right, they don't just draft players, they draft destiny. Michael Jordan going third in 1984 changed everything. Chicago got a player who would average 30.1 points per game for his career, the highest in NBA history. 6 championships, 6 finals MVPs, 5 regular season MVPs. Jordan didn't just become the greatest player of his generation, he became a global icon who transformed basketball into worldwide entertainment. The 1984 draft wasn't just about Jordan, though. Houston selected Hakeem Olajuwon first overall, and while that might seem like a mistake in hindsight, Olajuwon became one of the greatest centers ever, leading Houston to back-to-back championships in 1994 and 1995. Charles Barkley went 5th to Philadelphia, becoming an MVP and one of basketball's most dominant forces. John Stockton, the career leader in assists and steals, went 16th to Utah. 4 Hall of Famers in the first 16 picks. That's the difference between a legendary draft class and a typical one. Tim Duncan's arrival in San Antonio in 1997 created what might be the most consistent dynasty in modern sports. Over 19 seasons, Duncan averaged 19.0 points, 10.8 rebounds, and 2.2 blocks, while leading the Spurs to 5 championships. He was so fundamentally sound that he made excellence look boring. The Spurs went 1,072-438 during his tenure, a Howe 710 winning percentage that sustained for nearly 2 decades. Duncan's story has an interesting twist. Born in the U.S. Virgin Islands, he originally wanted to be an Olympic swimmer. Hurricane Hugo destroyed the island's only Olympic pool in 1989, forcing him toward basketball. One natural disaster changed the course of NBA history, but no draft steal compares to Nikola Jokic at 41st overall in 2014. Denver found a 3-time MVP and NBA champion in the second round, famously during a Taco Bell commercial break. Jokic represents the ultimate draft success story, a player so good that he makes everyone who passed on him look foolish. He's already a first-ballot Hall of Famer before turning 30. Giannis' rise from 15th overall to 2-time MVP shows how dramatically wrong draft projections can be. Milwaukee found him in Greece's second division, a skinny teenager selling trinkets on Athens street corners. For 18 years, he was effectively stateless, unable to travel outside Greece. He received Greek citizenship just 2 months before the 2013 draft. Greg Popovich admitted, "I didn't know who the hell he was." Now Giannis has led Milwaukee to their first championship in 50 years, while establishing himself as one of the league's most dominant players. Kobe Bryant's draft day journey illustrates how complex these decisions become. Charlotte selected him 13th in 1996, but immediately traded him to Los Angeles for Vlade Divac. Kobe had threatened to play in Italy if certain teams drafted him, essentially forcing his way to the Lakers. The result? 5 championships and the second greatest shooting guard career in NBA history. These stories matter because they're happening right now. In 2023, San Antonio won the lottery and selected Victor Wembanyama, a 7'4" French phenomenon with guard skills. He's being called the best prospect since LeBron James, a player who could redefine what's possible in basketball. Spurs GM Brian Wright said, "He's not LeBron or Tim or anybody else. He's Victor, and that's who we want him to be." The draft's power to create and destroy franchises continues. Dallas holds the 2025 number 1 pick and will likely select Jukes Cooper-Flagg, another can't-miss prospect. But as we've learned, there's no such thing as a sure thing in the draft. That's what makes these stories so compelling. Every June, 30 teams make decisions that will echo for decades. They're not just selecting players, they're selecting hope, selecting futures, selecting the next chapter of their franchise's story. Sometimes they find magic. Sometimes they find heartbreak. But they always find drama, because in the NBA draft, legends and busts are separated by the thinnest of margins and the weight of expectations that can crush or create greatness.